Today's readings from Mark. Jesus and his followers came into Jericho. As Jesus was leaving Jericho together with his disciples, a sizable crowd, a blind beggar named Bartimaeus, Timaeus' son, was sitting beside the road. When he heard that Jesus of Nazareth was there, he began to shout, "Jesus, Son of David, show me mercy." Many scolded him, telling him to be quiet, but he shouted even louder, "Son of David, show me mercy." Jesus stopped and said, "Call him forward." They called the blind man. "Be encouraged, get up, he is calling you." Throwing his coat to the side, he jumped up and came to Jesus. Jesus asked him, "What do you want me to do for you?" The blind man said, "Teacher, I want to see." Jesus said, "Go, your faith has healed you." At once he was able to see, and he began to follow Jesus on the way. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Oh, blind Bart. You give us so many possibilities, and yet your story doesn't come without its problems, too. Just one of the many miraculous healing stories that we find in the Gospels, a telling of how Jesus is involved in the healing of those around him. It still opens that debate for us as sometimes skeptical 21st century Christians. Is it literal? Is this really what is happening? Or is this a story that has a deeper meaning and operates on different levels? And now we live in a day and an age when to be without sight or without full sight is not the debilitating act that it would have been for somebody like Bartimaeus in his day and age. A time when to be unable to see would render you unable to navigate in the world around you, unable to attend to your own living, to be at the mercy of those who would provide for you as you begged on the street. And not to mention that it comes with that theological curse, those silent whisperings of those around you. What sin did he commit that God would take his sight? Or if he was born that way, what sin did his parents do? What wrong did they commit that he would be born without his sight? Much the same way as we see with the stories of those who are crippled or lame or in other ways physically disabled, finding themselves in much the same condition, unable to make their way in a world that was dangerous, in which you required the full capacities of sight and of physical wellness and strength to make your way. You found yourselves at the mercy of others, but also at the end of the whispers of others. We don't live in that same world anymore. The inability to see no longer need be a complete incapacitation for a person. The damaging of any of our appendages or part of the physical body is no longer a death sentence. It's no longer a sentence to poverty or begging or living at the mercy of others. We've made great advances in our ability to treat people for critical injuries, to allow ourselves to walk and to work. We have allowed and created a world where those who cannot see or cannot fully see can now get around better and can survive without being at the mercy of those who would offer them the scraps of their table. So we find ourselves facing this problematic, unspoken assumption at the far end of these healing stories of what is wrong with those who were blind, or those who were crippled or maimed or otherwise incapacitated. As we live in a world where we have found that there's nothing wrong with those who find themselves otherly abled. So we struggle with what we might call an ableist understanding at the back end of these healings, that to be without sight or to have a damaged limb or appendage is to somehow be defective or less than fully human. And yet that is not the world which we know. So we have to wrestle with these stories and with these texts in that way. But I was also drawn to another aspect of our story today. And here's where blind Bart circles us back to the possibilities. You hear the story. You hear him as the crowd that is thronging around Jesus approaches the position where he has sat down, where he is asking for the alms of those who would go around him. He hears Jesus approaching and he knows who is coming. And so he cries out, "Jesus, Son of David, show me mercy." And we hear the stories of the crowd, the bullies who shush him, tell him to be quiet, leave the Messiah alone, leave our Holy One to be. We need him. And he cries out again, "Jesus, show mercy on me." And Jesus says, "Bring him, let him come. Let him come." So we imagine Bart getting up and making his way over. I love the story. It makes it sound as if he gets up and runs to Jesus, and I don't know how quickly he could have made it, how well he could have seen. Were his ears so attuned that he could make the journey? But he comes to Jesus' side. "Jesus, Son of David, show me mercy." And here's where the story turns. How many of us are expecting that moment where Jesus would reach out and touch, where Jesus would lay his hands upon him? Or how many of us are drawn to the story from John at the pools at Bethsaida, where Jesus meets the man who is blind by the pools and creates mud and puts it on his eyes and tells him to wash it off, and the scales would fall away and see? We're used to the idea of Jesus reaching out and somehow physically imparting healing. But not in this story. In this story, Jesus simply tells him, "Your faith has allowed you to be healed. Go and be. Through your faith, you have been healed." He doesn't even say, "Because of your faith, I have healed you." He just says, "Thanks to your faith, you will receive healing." Jesus, show me mercy. It's a powerful, powerful metaphor, even with its problems. Jesus, show me mercy. And maybe our first instinct is to think of ourselves, throwing ourselves at the feet of Jesus, sinners all. "Jesus, show us mercy." But what if our cry was, "Jesus, show us mercy. Help us to open our eyes to see mercy around us. Help us to find healing through our own faith, not through being physically touched or reached out to by Christ walking among us, but through the power of that faith, that we might see mercy all around us." I know I'm taking the words and I'm carrying it off in a different direction, but isn't there something powerful about the thought of crying out, "Jesus, show me mercy. Help me to see"? We're in the middle of stewardship season. We're trying to find ways to deal with all those questions that we hate talking about in church, budgets and estimates of giving and all of the hubbub that goes on with that. And part of the problem that we run into is we forget the places and the ways that we see mercy all around us. When I stop to ask, "Jesus, show me mercy," and I look around this space, I can look to these pews. It's almost always these pews, not every time. These are often the pews where the families and loved ones of the deceased will gather when we hold a memorial service in this space. And in these pews out here where the rest of you all are sitting, this is where the community gathers to be with them, to remember the one who is lost and to support the family and friends who are sitting here in the front, those who are grieving and mourning. Show me mercy. It's right here. Mercy happens in this space when we show up as a community and support one another. You're never going to see a line item in your budget that reminds you that this is the space we maintain to gather, to care for one another through the transitions of loved ones, through the emptiness and the loss that we struggle with when a loved one goes on into the life, into the next. But Jesus, show me mercy. And I see it right here. Where do we see mercy? If we cried out, Jesus, show us mercy, where do we see mercy around us right now? I should probably be clearer. I'm not being rhetorical at the moment. I'm actually inviting you. Jesus, show us mercy. Where do we see mercy? Where do we? Say it again.
With a kind face.
With a kind face. I see quite a few of those around us right now. And a helping hand. Jesus, show us mercy. Look around and you can see it. Where else? A kind act. And a community that is there to offer them. Prayer shawls. Jesus, show us mercy. To craft a shawl that will be given to someone we may never meet. Show us mercy. How else? I got hugs. Yes, for those of us who are cool with hugs, hugs show us mercy. For those of us who are not, greeting is good too. Sure. The prayers. We'll never see the prayers in a budget. We'll never see them lifted up when we talk about the stewardship of the church, and yet it is an important gift that we offer one another. And part of our stewardship is maintaining these gatherings as a community so that we know one another, we hear our prayers, and we enact God's mercy for each other. Jesus, show us mercy. Food bank. Backpack brigade. Communion table. Jesus, show us mercy. The longest night. Santa breakfast. Halloween. There's nothing that says Jesus show us mercy can't also be Jesus show us how we have some fun together too. I heard visiting our shut-ins. That one doesn't show up in our budgets either. And yet, Jesus, show us mercy. Those of us who go out and visit. Week of compassion. Gathering our offerings to send beyond the door to help those who have suffered greatly from hurricanes, from earthquakes, refugee displacements. Jesus, show us mercy. The well, coffee oasis. Jesus. Pentecost, building up of new churches, celebrating the building up of our church. Jesus, show us mercy.
Individual baptisms.
The baptisms. Being able to celebrate with those who are coming into the faith as new Christians. Jesus, show us mercy. If you're running out of ideas, it's okay. Hang around after the service and after the meal. You'll see some more of them. Yes, it's a quiz show format. We're going to have a little fun with it. But Jesus... And it's good news. It is good news. The ways that this church continues to show mercy to one another, to our neighbors, to our community, and to our world. Our compassion. Jesus, show us mercy. Through our faith, may we find the ways that we see and we hear and we reach out and embrace one another. Jesus is showing us mercy. All we have to do is look around and see it. Last week, I told you that many of you are living out your faith in ways you haven't even elaborated yet, like it was for me. Who knew turning a compost heap and creating soil could be a holy act? It took me so long to realize I'm doing God's work. How many of us are doing God's work and haven't made the connection? I know of a person at a church I used to be connected with long ago and far away, social worker, and one day made the comment, she wasn't sure how she could live out her faith, and I'm thinking, you're a social worker, you live out your faith every day. You just have to connect your story to what you're doing. It's the same for us as a church. We are living out our faith in ways that we don't always know and we don't always see. We embraced this campaign that we have used somewhat and somewhat not of what shall we bring, but maybe now I wish I'd thought of it months ago. The campaign should have been Jesus. Show us mercy. Open our eyes and let us see it. Let our faith allow us to see healing and to be healed. We will see mercy. We will show mercy. We will be mercy. Stick around afterward. Find out the ways that we're doing it that you may not have realized. Pray after that about the ways that we might yet do it that we haven't even imagined or seen yet. Jesus, show us mercy and allow us to show the world mercy. Amen? Amen. Amen.